What do you do when you realize the people who were supposed to love you most have been running a long con, and the only currency they ever wanted was you? People ask me what it feels like. Not directly, usually. They circle it. They say things like, "Are you doing okay?" Or, "That must have been such a hard decision." As if what I did was an amputation, something survivable but grievous. I understand why they frame it that way. It makes more sense to them if I'm wounded. A daughter who walks away from her parents without visible damage is harder to categorize. I am not wounded. That's the part I'm still learning how to say out loud without it sounding like a performance. The apartment I leased is on the 4th floor of a building in Richmond's museum district, a neighborhood I had admired for years from a careful distance. The way you admire things you've convinced yourself you don't deserve. 2 bedrooms, one of which I use as an office. Hardwood floors, original to the building, 1927, with a particular warmth that comes from a century of people walking the same boards. When I saw it, I thought about Francis's house. I did not cry. I signed the lease the same afternoon. I unpacked alone over 3 days. No help. I want to be clear that this was a choice, not a circumstance. My friend Petra offered twice. I thanked her and said I needed to do it myself. There is something I had never fully experienced before. The act of placing an object in a room and knowing it would still be there, exactly where I left it when I came home. That sounds small. It was not small. I put Francis's ceramic cookie jar on the kitchen counter where it belonged, where it had always belonged, and I stood there for a moment, and I did not move it. I sleep differently now. This surprised me. I had not understood how much of my sleep had been a kind of low-grade vigilance, the particular alertness of someone who has spent years listening for footsteps on stairs, for the tone in a voice that means a need is incoming. The first week in the apartment, I kept waking at 3 a.m. and lying there waiting for something to happen. Nothing happened. The ceiling was just a ceiling. By the 3rd week, I was sleeping until my alarm. Dr. Souza calls this decompression. She says the nervous system takes time to believe that the threat has actually ended. She says this in the careful, clinical way she says most things, and then she waits, and I say something, and she writes something down, and I feel incrementally like a person who is allowed to take up space. I kept my job. This surprised some people, I think. There was an assumption somewhere in the extended family that I had done something dramatic, and therefore was probably spiraling. I was not spiraling. I was working. I negotiated a vendor contract in the 2nd week that saved my firm $340,000 over 3 years, and my director sent me an email that said, "Outstanding work as always, Annabelle." I read it twice. I saved it. I am aware this is a thing I do. Save evidence of being valued. A habit built over years of needing proof that I existed usefully in the world. Dr. Souza and I are working on that. Financially, I want to be straightforward, because I think vagueness about money is its own kind of dishonesty. The $980,000 is in a high-yield account. I have not touched the principal. I live on my salary, which I have always lived on, even during the years I was also subsidizing my parents, even when the math required me to stop contributing to my own retirement fund for 14 months, a fact I had never said aloud to anyone until I said it to Dr. Souza, and watched her face do the thing faces do when numbers make a pattern undeniable. I am catching up now. The numbers are moving in the right direction. For the first time in my adult life, I am only responsible for my own financial future, and the sensation is so unfamiliar, it sometimes feels like a symptom of something. It is not a symptom of something. It is just what stability feels like when you've never had it. I visit Francis's house sometimes. I don't go inside. I don't have that right anymore, and I made peace with that before I signed the closing paperwork, not after. Marcus Leith's development team has not touched the exterior yet. The soft gray blue is still there. I drove past in April. The oak tree had new growth on the lower branches. The particular bright green of a thing that is still reaching upward and has no idea it was ever in danger. I sat in my car across the street for about 4 minutes. Then I drove home. My father called once more, 8 weeks after Italy. Not from his own number, from a number I didn't recognize. A Scottsdale area code I hadn't blocked because I hadn't known to block it. I answered on the 2nd ring out of pure reflex, that old trained responsiveness. And when I heard his voice, I felt the thing Dr. Souza had prepared me to feel. The pull, the familiar gravity, and underneath it, like bedrock, the memory of a restaurant in Arizona, and a laugh that was real and loose and certain. I said, "I'm going to stop you there." He stopped. I said, "I have the recording. Vivian Park has the recording. If you contact me again through any number I haven't given you, or through any family member, or through any attorney who is not prepared to explain to a judge why you were discussing deed manipulation over dinner, I will let Vivian decide what to do with it. I want you to understand that she would enjoy that." A pause. The particular silence of a man who has spent his life being the most reasonable person in the room and has just understood that the room has changed. I said, "I hope Italy was beautiful. I hope the lemon grove was everything you wanted." I hung up. I sat at my kitchen counter for a while after that, with my coffee, in my apartment, in my neighborhood, in my life. The cookie jar was on the counter. The window was getting the afternoon light. Nothing was in the wrong place. I thought about Francis. about the way she used to look up at me in the oak tree and say, "There's my girl." Not my granddaughter, not Annabelle, my girl. A specific, deliberate claiming. The thing she understood that my parents never did, and probably never will. To truly see someone is to make them real, and a real person cannot be a burden, because a burden is a thing, and a thing has no name of its own. She gave me my name. I am taking care of it.